What's up, everyone? Hurricane is here. I am live with Jared, and Jared, he's here. He's taken again another day out of his time to talk with us. Jared, just wanted first of all for you to say hi to everybody, and then we'll get started here in a minute after that. But just say hi to everyone.
Yeah, hey everyone. It's good to be here again. Questions have been good. We've got some interesting topics to talk about today, as always, and yeah, we'll keep rolling along here.
Awesome. So, JT, people are finally getting on here, so we're going to wait a little while longer. But just wanted to first start off today's conversation with a question that we did get from a viewer. So I know this person very well. Brenda asked if she's read your first copy of your book, which I have right here. I prepared, I came on here, I thought of a lot of scenarios, just in case we didn't have enough content to cover or topics to cover. But Brenda asks, she's read your first book. Should she read her second? Does it apply to business as well?
Yeah, so the simple answer is yes, and probably more so. The second book is, I'd say, more written in a more generic language. It's still written in poker, obviously, but a lot of the themes and concepts in there about the zone, about learning efficiently, about making high-quality decisions, goal setting, focus, self-discipline, and mental endurance are really applicable to really any industry. It just takes a little bit of skill and kind of taking those ideas and applying them to what you're doing. But there's one thing that is, I think, interesting in Brenda's question, which I actually get a lot, and so I'm not nitpicking her by any means, but I think it's important to look at what the idea of like reading the book actually means, right? This book, and really both books, they're resources. They're not just sort of your run-of-the-mill book that you're going to pick up and be able to instantly apply everything instantly. If you've got significant issues or even just mild issues, it's going to take some work to actually apply. So I want you, Brenda, and anybody who's listening, to both read and apply and see some progress with what it is that you're trying to accomplish before you move on to the next book. Think of it as a graduation, not necessarily just, the necessary next step. So, I'm not trying to not sell books, but I'm trying to get you to get maximum value, because that's how I believe I'm going to sell the most books. Because when you actually see the value that the material provides, then you're actually going to be able to apply what you're learning in the second book. Otherwise, if you're just reading book 1 and book 2 just straight through, you are cramming your head full of so much information that you're not really going to be able to know how to make use of it. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make, not just with reading my book, but just in sort of this feeling of or desire to constantly consume more and more information, and that seemingly being the strategy for results, versus actually applying it, integrating it, thinking about it, and making sure that you're making use of it before you start consuming more of it.
And I think that's a really good point, Jared, because it's a point that a lot of people have asked me about. Obviously, a lot of people are huge fans of Ty Lopez. He's a good friend of mine, and he hammers in the fact that he reads a book a day. Bill Gates reads a book a day. Warren Buffett reads for 8 hours a day. And Ty obviously reads a lot. But what people got to understand about that is reading is good, but you've got to understand these situations that those three guys are coming from. Ty runs a book club. He runs a business, revolves around giving people information about books. Warren Buffett is almost retired billionaire who has all the time in the world to do whatever the heck he wants. He doesn't have to really do much of anything else because he's built a huge machine. Same thing with Bill Gates. So I think for me, when I hear a lot of people like, I read all these books, a lot of us consume information in different types of bits, I guess you can call it. Like for me, I read 2 books this week. I went through 2 books this week, and that was way too much for me. I had to slow it down because if I'm going to apply some of the concepts from those books, it's going to take me several weeks just in order to develop them into a habit. So I think a lot of people are pressured into learning way too much and taking too little action. Is that a good interpretation of what you just said, Jerry?
Yeah, entirely. I mean, sometimes it takes me like 4 to 6 months to read a book, and sometimes I have multiple books that I'm reading concurrently. But the main idea is that if I choose to read a book, it's because I believe that there's a lot of value in it. Otherwise, I'm going to find similar information in other ways. Like I'm going to go read a journal article about a topic that I'm researching in psychology, or if it's a fiction book, it's a different story. But I mainly read nonfiction. So if it's a book that I'm going to actually like spend the time reading cover to cover, I'm going to get the most out of it. I'm not going to just I think there are some people who might take a strategy of skimming it or reading really quickly and then going back and rereading sections that are very applicable to them. That I'm perfectly, on board with. I'm not a great skimmer, so I tend to just sort of go for the clunky method. But to me, it's about application, integration, not just about consumption. Otherwise, you just become like overweight in terms of your mental capacity versus somebody who's actually kind of working at it and really lean and fit mentally or intellectually.
Right. So I think that's one of the things that I kind of realized. Not just do I develop anxiety for not reading enough when I see all my friends, because I'm so competitive, but I see all my friends talking about all these books they read, and I'm like, Jesus, I haven't read that much. What am I doing? I started to get anxiety about it, and I'm sort of like, should I be on the same path that they're on and stop doing all the other things that I'm doing? But then I realized if that's going to happen, I'm going to stop taking as much action as I take. Because as I told you that first time when we actually ran this, I'm into the habit of taking massive, massive imperfect action. Most of the time it comes out okay. A lot of times it comes out really perfect, and a lot of times it comes out like total crap. So for me, in order to read more, I would have to take some time away from taking action. Where I think some people have to realize at some point, and you talk about this in your book, there's a point where there's too much learning going on. So you got to have a good balance for learning enough and not learning enough. Am I right when I say that?
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to do, but it's something that skillful people understand, right? I mean, if you're a professional golfer, you're a professional athlete, right? Are you constantly getting coaching and trying to improve your technique, or are you getting coaching that helps you to refine your technique so that you can be applying it regularly, right? So at this stage in sort of my game as a coach, as a therapist, as a sometimes as an author too, the coaching or the guidance I get are in the form of trainings that I'll go to. I'll go and talk to a professional, although I have difficulty finding people that give me as much value as I can give myself in just doing some journal writing. But so that training is really, it's designed to help me be better at my job. And it's rare that I find something that is going to be that I'm going to want to do like, week-long trainings on and really spend time to work at it. A lot of times it's just picking up one idea, from an 8-hour training and making sure that I apply that one idea consistently. But if I did a training every month and try to apply that one idea, it's actually going to get lost. Even that is too much, because at the end of the day, a lot of my development comes organically. But I'm sort of sidestepping the issue. The main idea is, find a balance for what is right for you in terms of how much consumption that you can bring in from outside resources, and also how much organic learning can you be creating for yourself by understanding more about what leads you to be successful. I mean, there are a lot of systems out there, and many of them are incredibly good, like yours are. But the bottom line is there's still going to be nuances that are going to be different from that system that you're going to have to create for yourself. And that's where an understanding of what makes you tick, what makes you driven, or what drives you, what you're interested in. What you're interested in, Liz, is going to be something different than somebody else's. And so, being able to sell something and being able to be passionate is a huge goal. And so, my guess is you selling, stuff for your cat is probably going to be something you'll be way more passionate about, than selling, lawnmower equipment. But maybe I'm wrong.
Right. Actually, no, Jared, you're totally wrong. I would sell either one, whichever one would make more money.
Well, there we go. Okay.
With a couple interesting things that I just wanted to touch on that you talked about that lead us straight into what today's all about. I sent out an email to everyone letting them know what this topic would be about. I notified them about what I was going to tell you, but I did not notify you. So this is going to be.
You just notified me that I was in the dark, which I appreciate.
That's all I notified you of. So one of the things is that a lot of times people get into this comfort zone with learning, in my opinion, and learning is their comfort and safety zone. And the reason they don't want to break out of it is because they're afraid. So which leads us straight into the topic of today, fear, specifically fear in business. So two really key things happened to me this week, Jerry, that made me think of this and made me think of this topic for today's actual talk. The first of those things is I saw this movie called Finding Dory. Have you seen that yet?
Only the previews.
Okay. I actually went out and saw this movie, and it taught me, as I told everyone on my list, two really important lessons. One of the ones that I can obviously share here is the fact.
Are you going to ruin the movie for me? Is that what you're going to do?
No, I'm not going to ruin it at all.
Okay.
I'm just going to talk really quick about Dory and what makes Dory so special. She's this fish who suffers from short-term memory loss. So she doesn't really remember what she did 10 minutes ago, can't even really remember her family at a certain point. And so she basically lives her entire life not knowing what happened just 10, 15 minutes ago. And so within the movie, there's another two fish. It's Marlin and his son Nemo, who were from the first movie. Dory reunited them, and it was all basically her doing. And what Dory is now doing in this one is trying to reunite herself with her family. So one classic scene in the movie is where Nemo, Marlin's son, says, "Why can't you be more like Dory instead of overanalyzing, overthinking, and pretty much being a doomsdayer?" Because at one point they're trapped in this particular area, and he says, "What would Dory do?" So what it reminded me of that is because Dory, really, because of that short-term memory loss, she has absolutely no fear. She just stops where she's at. She assesses the situation. Then she comes up with a plan and she just executes it because she's got no recollection of what's happened to her in the past. And I feel that that's one of the leading factors that people have. So what I came to you with, and the reason I thought of you immediately, is this week on my webinar series, we had a challenge to everybody on there that put up an Amazon product. I laid out the steps for them step by step, week by week. There were several groups of people, and it was even evident in their posts, Jared. A couple people, we'll say a group of maybe like 10, took the idea and ran. They put products up, and most of them already sold out. There's a group that did it but is struggling with a couple different things. And then there's a group that's still stuck in it's sitting here, but I'm not sure what to do. I'm even afraid to put it on there and see what happens. So immediately I thought of you. Immediately I thought of Dory because I thought to myself, I used to tell you this all the time. You're the Dory, pretty much. What would Jared do?
What would Jared do? I remember.
In this case, what would Dory do? So how do you address people that are stuck in that, I've got all this stuff, it's ready to send to Amazon, but I have no idea what to do? What would be your advice to them? Because that's obviously they're afraid to do something.
Yeah, I would say, given what you've described, my advice to them is going to be more specific than I would be in a general sense to people who are dealing with fear. So the people that you said put stuff up there may have had some hesitation, maybe even some anxiety or some small amounts of fear in doing so, but they were able to push themselves to do it and kind of get over that hurdle. The people you're describing were not able to do that. And so there's something unique and paralyzing, in a sense, about that fear. It's much more significant or severe. And so my advice really is to dig into the core of what that fear is all about. There's no real sort of mental tip that is going to actually make it easy for them to do it, right? They're actually going to have to do some work to figure out the origins of this fear and kind of take it head on, like we've been discussing in the previous conversations. So fear of failure could be it. Fear of success sounds strange, but is real. Sometimes people fear what success might turn them into and change them as a person. So there's some fears there. Fears of making mistakes, fears of looking bad, of embarrassment, things like that sort. And those are just sort of the general themes. You want to figure out exactly what the fear is for you and start to break it down. Once you identify, let's say, the main heading, fear of failure, fear of mistakes, then you want to start to play it out in your head. What exactly is it that you're afraid of? And kind of ask yourself a bunch of why questions, like, well, why is it that, failure would be so bad? Well, it would make me ashamed. I've failed so many times in the past. It would mean that I wouldn't get respect from my family and friends. It would mean that I would, lose money. And so then you kind of play it out again. Okay, well, why would those things be bad? So, well, I'm really seeking respect, and it will make me feel a lot better. People have questioned my decision making, and I believe I can do it, but they don't, and I want to prove them wrong, or something like that. I can't afford to lose money. well, then maybe you're making, too large of a risk here. Or maybe it is that, you want that money so bad that you can't see the opportunity that investing or the cost that's involved in losing product in order to gain information that's going to help you to form better ones. So you're trying to unpack and really identify exactly what the fear is about so that you can begin to identify what the flaws are in that logic. Are you trying to be too controlling? Is there some version of learning that you think doesn't apply to you, where you can come up with perfect ideas and have them never fail? And are you fearful that you're not strong enough to be able to tolerate that? So once you start to identify those flaws, then that becomes the thing that you are trying to correct, and you're trying to correct it at the time that you're trying to push yourself to actually put that product out.
Right. So in essence, what they should actually be doing is really following some of the guidelines in the book, which is doing some journaling or writing out some mental hand histories and try to get down to the root of that fear. Is that
exactly? Yeah, because it's clearly there's not at this point we can say it's not a tactical knowledge-based thing. What you're communicating to them is advice that works, proven by the people that are following it. So they have the information, not using it. Why aren't they using it? The fear is blocking them. So we've got to deal directly with the fear. You can't just try to outlearn yourself in this case and learn more information. You're clearly being held back, and until you get unstuck, you're really not going to be able to progress.
Right. And I think another thing that comes up right off the top of my head is I think a lot of them are probably feeling a little bit desperate, because the guy that I actually helped personally, like one-on-one, he was the Amazon apprentice. I helped him. He sent in his bundles and he sold out in 2 days and got 2 benefits out of it. He just followed all the advice direction. He was able to show us what he was doing. We critiqued it. He changed it. And I got on the call with him one time for about 20 minutes, told him what to do, and he sold out the next day. I think a few of them are actually feeling a little bit desperate because they see that he sold out and they feel that, wow, look at my peers here. They're doing really well and I haven't done anything. So they're kind of like in this desperation type mode. Can you kind of build a little bit upon that, Jared?
Yeah, desperation can come in many forms. That desperation is basically a form of kind of out-leveling, right? You're trying to jump higher than you can actually jump at this point, or that you can sort of see yourself jumping, because maybe the jump is actually not that big, but in your mind it feels overwhelming, and so there's this desperation, like you gotta, instantly jump over a 10-foot wall when, what you don't realize is that you're standing on top of an 8-foot ladder. So it's not quite as big of a hurdle, and I'm referencing you in that you're that 8-foot ladder providing the structure, and then the other thing is like not really being able to know that you can tolerate if you were the one failure out of the whole group. Well, what if your failure actually educates not just you, but the whole group? Oh, so yeah, have somebody hop on here.
Yeah, I think I accidentally put the wrong link on there.
Oh. Okay.
Right link. Sorry about that.
No problem. Yeah. So there's a concern that you're not going to be able to learn, right? You're not going to be able to actually understand the lesson that failure is going to provide, because at this stage of the game, there has to be something you're going to learn from it. The failure isn't permanent. It doesn't mean that you're going to not be successful. It just means that there was something wrong in your assessment that you didn't know beforehand. And once you analyze and understand and get feedback from you or from others, then you're going to be more skilled and capable of making the right decisions. So there's a lot you can learn from success. Some people overlook it and just focus on the results, and don't get into the nuances of why the apprentice or why anyone else in the group has been successful. And it could be as simple as being, validation for your system, or it could be, there may be some nuances to what they did and how they were able to use your system that they can learn from as well.
Right. And I think for me personally, Jared, I used to actually struggle with this myself. I would look at things like, I would look at my peers in the poker world and say like, wow, there's this guy, he's making $60,000 a month. I want to be just like that guy one day. at the same time, like, how is it that we're at equal, we start equally, and now he's just crushing it, and I didn't get that high that quickly. And for me, it was like really difficult at first. But finally, when things started to make sense is when I realized that we're all on different paths, obviously, and some people excel at things faster than others. But that doesn't necessarily mean, for starters, you're going to not ever catch up with them. You have every potential to catch up with them. But secondly, when I actually started to journal things, and I brought something back with me from back home, so you're going to definitely, wow. This thing is pretty much just about full. I think it's almost all the way full. This is my very first poker journal. It's pretty much all the way full. And it has some incredible lessons that I learned from Jared. When I started to write things down in terms of like my progress and how well I was doing on my particular time scale, that's when things really started to click, because I realized I was improving. So can you touch upon the importance of the journal? And let me just show this to Jared. Also develop my own routine, which here said I would versus opponents. What player type are they? What can I exploit? I typed it out. I did a bunch of stuff. I talked about my tendencies when I was about to go on tilt. I knew I should fold but I called. I acted without thinking. I began to bluff. I wrote everything down. And what I began to see is dramatic results. But again, this isn't only applicable to poker. You can also do this in business. Right now, if you're feeling that fear, write about it. If you're feeling that desperation, write about it. Get to the root of the problem. But can you expand a little bit more on why that's important and what basic things people should be writing about when it comes to their business?
Yeah, I mean, the first part is that like the mind has a limited capacity, right? And if you're in a like sort of a normal mental and emotional state, then you have between like 5 and 9 pieces of information that you can hold at one time in your mind, right? And that variation is just sort of a variation that exists in the population. I haven't seen research on this, but perhaps maybe more intelligent people, naturally more intelligent people, are able to process more information at one time than somebody who's not quite as bright. I'm not really sure, but the point is that whether it's 5 or 9, everybody has limitations. It's not 100, right? So those like memory champions, right? What they've done is been able to chunk information and organize it in a way that allows them to learn and process large amounts of data more quickly, but they're not defying the rules that this limitation has. So the reason that this applies to journaling is because what happens to a lot of people, especially those who are kind of mired and stuck in fear, is that the mind is producing a lot of thought, right? And especially if you've been learning a lot too, you've been consuming a lot of information, basically that space in your mind becomes jam full. You're not able to kind of think to the next level. And so writing has a way of kind of offloading some of those thoughts. Now your mind doesn't have to hold on to them as much. Now your mind is a little bit clearer. It's like taking a desk that is just riddled with papers everywhere. And so you can't find information. You can't make connections. You can't think about your problem in a unique way. And so the journaling has a way of cleaning things up and allowing you to think on that next level, create insight that you couldn't have seen before. You did it in the journaling. I've done it personally. Lots of my clients have done the same thing. And so that journaling is really valuable because it allows you to sort of manage the limitations that exist within that space in the mind. Now, what are you going to start writing about? If you have no ideas, what you could do is just start writing about what your problem is. You just mentioned a few minutes ago, you're feeling fear. So what you would do is start writing about some of the thoughts that pop in your head, the specific thoughts in your head that come to mind when you open up an email from Liz, or when you're looking at the back of Amazon Seller Central and you're seeing your listings, and you're just even or maybe even when you're thinking about going to do those things. What are the thoughts that keep coming to mind? What are the emotions, the signs, how you feel it? Do you feel it in your body somewhere? What are your behaviors? Do you end up avoiding? Do you end up going and doing something randomly? What you're doing is basically trying to create a profile of the problem. So the journaling is a really important place to do that, because the more that you do it day after day, the more educated you will become about this particular problem. You're not even quote unquote like solving it yet. You're not even coming up with answers. You're just better mapping and describing it. I've discussed this in previous calls. right? That is such a huge asset to have, because, you know, in large part, people have pretty poorly defined problems, and as a result, they get poor answers. So the mapping is one example that you can really go through. You know, in the book, I detail out the mental hand history. Actually, I think in the last call, we did the same thing too, going through that. So you can actually go through those steps in the journal. You can be using the journal to write down ideas that you have for selling, or important keys that you get from somebody else, or things that you're in the process of learning. You could spend, you know, 15 minutes actually taking notes about one of the lessons that Liz has given you, or that you've learned from a book, and use it as a way of trying to integrate that knowledge into your mind. So, you know, the journal has many functions, but you know, at the end of the day, the main purpose is to get stuff out of your head so you can learn and think more efficiently.
Yeah, just to show everybody, this tendency part was to help combat my actual tilt problem, which is basically a way to get a lot of your poker chips taken from you. Obviously, I had a big problem with that. That's one of the very reasons I started to talk to Jared. And what I found that I should do is, as Jared just talked, what were my tendencies right before that problem happened. So that's kind of how I started my journal. Now I use a journal for just about everything. And a lot of times it's so much better for me personally to write it inside of a book and actually physically have to go through the actual process of writing something, as opposed to putting it in a computer, because I feel that when I type something, it doesn't get stuck in my head as well as when I write it out. Plus, I have an easy way to just go back for it. I know a lot of people are addicted to the internet in general and smartphones and iPads and all that crap, but I find that a good old-fashioned journal works best because I can take it anywhere, I can write anywhere, and it really gets embedded into my mind. But for those of you guys that do not know, actually in Jared's book, Jared tells the story of how I made fun of this actual problem. So I'm not sure, I don't actually have it prepared here what page it's on, but for those of you guys that actually...
Yeah, like, probably close to like page 116 would be my first guess, maybe like one...
Is that your final answer, Jared?
That's not my final answer, but that's my final guess.
It's actually 83. It's,
really?
The concept of a journal right here. I thought it was lame.
Overshot that, yeah.
I told him that sounds like a load of horseshit, Jared. I'm not going to sit there in a journal like a teenage girl and write this garbage. And he used to say, I don't know if I have to continue with the end of the story. I went something like, I realized 6 months.
Yada, 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 you were right.
Yeah. So that's all I'm going to say about that, guys. So if it sounds like it's a lame thing for you guys to do, don't knock it down until you try it. Because trust me, you're going to get addicted to it. Write down that problem, figure out what it is, and then think of a solution. As I did, I wrote down my tendencies, so while I was actually playing, I would look for these signs that I was getting heated up or that my palms were sweaty. And immediately upon noticing them, instead of doing what I regularly continue to do, which is play poker and lose a ton of money, I would stop, take a break, and realize that guess what? When I cooled down, poker was still there. So that was a huge aha moment for me personally. So any other tips with the journal for people just in regards to fear before?
Yeah, I guess I'll say one thing. Some people do respond well to writing in the computer, so it is a personal choice. What you want to do is just test it out. For me personally, there are things that I want to write physically, and then there are some things where, you know, writing in the computer works just fine. What I found is that when I have more well-formed ideas, the computer works great. When I'm really kind of incubating and really trying to figure something out, that's where writing helps me better. Again, personal preference, figure it out for yourself. That's one. Two, like, so much insight, so much knowledge is already crammed in your head, right? All of you are adults. You've had a lot of life experience. There are things that you can draw on that you're unable to draw on because there's too much crap in your head. A lot of it's good crap. Some of it's bad crap. The bottom line is, with it there, it's harder to think to the next level. And so when Liz mentioned to create insight, to me, that's the same idea. Insight is just a description of you making your thoughts move forward. Because once you have some insight and you learn more, then you're going to have insights that's going to take you even further, kind of down the path or taking you up, in additional steps. Insight, that those sort of aha moments, the ideas that you create for yourself, right? The journal has a way of just freeing up your mind to be able to produce that more reliably and more consistently. And I think that there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of control in that, whereas instead of just being sort of consumed, in your own mind, you are in essence making your mind more of an asset. And I think in large part, people don't really know how to use their mind efficiently. And in a way, they quote unquote kind of like get in their own way. It's not really what's happening. What you're doing is you don't really understand how to use that your mind as a tool, and then sort of feels like you're in your own way, but really what you are is bloated and full of crap that needs to get out of the way in order for you to be more efficient.
Awesome. Thank you for those last words, Jared. My last words are, as I said before, if you're not using a journal, use it. I like to use it for everything. If you're reading a book a day, which is perfectly fine, make sure you journal about it. Keep an idea book where you have it in there. And like I would have ideas in here, and I would highlight the fact that it was something important that I wanted to get back to. I would review some of this stuff in here, sometimes once a day to see what I was thinking the day before, sometimes once a week, sometimes not that often. But again, since I would use it for ideas, I would be really using this as a tool, not just in my poker business, but in my regular business. Now I have a different journal. It's a lot bigger and thicker. But my point is, Jared was right when he told me to use a journal. I should have listened to him. I didn't, but eventually I got smart. I did it, and now it's been able to help me dramatically in my business life. Like I said, 10 times, even 10 times better than in my poker life. You can actually imagine that. That's how much of an impact it had on my life. As I've said before, Jared was my best poker coach. And that means a lot coming from somebody that doesn't even play poker that well. Any of you all can spend Jared's money immediately if you played him. So if you ever get the chance to play Jared poker, do it immediately. He's not that good. You will beat him. But again, as I said before, best poker coach that I've ever had, and he doesn't even play poker. So last for me are the words of the famous Dory, just keep swimming. That's what it's all about. But thank you, Jared, for joining us. I think next week we're going to have a break because Jared has something important to do, but we'll be back after that. But I will notify you guys via email and let you know when we'll be on again. So thank you again. And I know Jared thanks you guys too.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.